I'm going to talk a little bit about peak performance, how we can perform at our highest level, and I'm also going to talk about meeting needs, and if we have a little time, I'm going to talk about decreasing stress, okay? So I am all about this thing called flow state, and I want to demystify this and make this super simple, okay? Flow state is that state of mind. We often refer to it as in the zone. So if you've ever been in the zone, that's flow state. It's when we feel our best and perform our best. Outside of work, you might think about this, maybe if you're a sports person, you get there like when you're playing a sport, maybe on a team, maybe solo. If you're a nature person, a lot of people get there in nature. A number of years ago, I took a trip to Maui and jumped off a waterfall, and ooh boy, was I in flow. Like I just felt like the whole world was perfect. The chatter is out of our head. We're not worrying about the next thing. We're not worrying about the thing that came before. We're totally dialed in. If I'm up here speaking, majority of the time, I'm in flow. If I'm working with my clients one-on-one, I'm in flow. If I'm doing a presentation, oftentimes I get in flow. Now, I find it very easy to get in flow because I've been practicing this for over 15 years. I've read all the books, so you don't have to read the books, right? Getting into flow state, there is a formula. There's a complex way to look at it and a simple way to look at it. I'm going to give you guys the simple way today. If you're interested in the complex way, I'm happy to teach it at some point. So the simple way is thinking about flow state as the combination between a high skill level and a high challenge level, okay? So I'm going to use some examples. So for RJ, right? If RJ is working on a client who he's very skilled in the problem they're facing, elbow, referral pain, right? He gets it. He knows it. So he has a high skill level in that area. But there's also a high challenge level. Maybe there's a little bit of variation in the case. Maybe the person has been hurting for a really long time and he's looking for relief and has seen other chiropractors and hasn't been able to find it. Maybe the client is, giving him just a little bit of pushback. Not too much that he's cranky, but just a little bit, right? So that challenge gets high, and it's enough to engage RJ's nervous system so that he's not worrying about the next thing or the last thing. He's totally dialed in. Is that true, RJ? Have you hit flow state with patients like that before?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. So, or let me maybe pick on Nikki. So Nikki, I bet there are times where you're doing a project for a client, right? Where you have like a high skill level, you're like, oh, it's cool, I totally get this. But also there's some challenge, like it's a new client you're taking on that there's like a little risk with, or they have a really important event that's coming up, right? And you're there and you're working for 2 hours, and then you look up and you're like, whoa, I didn't realize time passed like that, right? So that's that flow state. There are ways for us to get into flow state at work. There are ways for us to get into flow state at home. For me, my biggest challenge when it came to flow state was when I started having kids, I didn't know how to be in flow with my kids. I didn't grow up with young kids in my family. There wasn't a lot of experience like that. So I often felt very out of flow when I was with my young kids. And I would keep thinking about, I want to go back to work. I want to go back to work. I want to go back to work, because that's where I knew how to feel good. So what I learned how to do was take the principles that applied to flow and use them with my kids. And now I'm in such better flow state with my kids. So high skill level but low challenge, we're just going to feel relaxed. There's no problem with that. I mean, that's fine once in a while, but that's not where most of us want to be for extended periods of time. Okay? Now, low skill level and high challenge, that's anxiety. A lot of people come to me when they're in this area. They're in anxiety, they're in worry, and we want to try to help them, right? Now, down here, low skill level, low challenge, it's apathy. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm depressed, I'm bummed out, right? Well, a lot of the problem is you may not be doing meaningful enough stuff. We want to plug you into things that feel meaningful on a daily basis, whether that's relationships or some kind of way to apply your unique skill set. And I help people find, okay, exactly what is it that I'm uniquely gifted and talented at, so I can plug myself into the world. So any questions about flow state? Does this make general sense? We've all been there at least once. So if you can think about the times you've been in flow and think about, okay, how can I replicate this? How can I make this bigger in my life? It can make a really big difference. So I'm not going to go deeply into this because it would take too much time. But like when I was giving the example about figuring out how to get into flow with my kids and thinking about the principles, when I'm doing a workshop on flow, I am getting into what are effectively 15 principles of flow and unpacking them little by little. I use 5 main foundations to make it clear, because 15 is too much, right? So the 5 main things we're focusing on when we're focusing on building flow in an area where we're not feeling it yet is number 1, presence. How can I be totally present and engaged in the moment I'm dealing with? Number 2 is peace. How can I feel peaceful? How can I feel less stress and more engaged in the present moment? How can I feel purpose, right? How can I feel that what I'm doing is meaningful and engaging for myself and the person I'm interacting with? The next is potential. How do I feel a sense of capability and a sense of my potential in engaging with this situation? And then finally is play. Okay, a lot of us in our business, we might get to the point where we lose that ability to play and have fun, but that's part of why we got started in the first place, right? So it should feel fun, whether it's the clients we're working with or the opportunities we're dealing with or the challenges we're facing with. We want to learn, we want to create. That's part of why, Greg's talking about going to the conference. Part of the reason the conference feels good is he's learning, right? That learning is important to us. It's playful. He might walk away creating a limerick. He has that energy, right, to create something new. He's connecting with people, right? So it's not rocket science, but it is figuring out how to do these simple things really well and sustainably, okay? When we're looking at high performance and success, it's people who have learned how to do things sustainably. And sustainably means we figure out how to dial it in, and then we figure out how to make sure it's staying dialed in, right? So for example, most of us have figured out by this point in our lives, we have a pretty steady routine with something like how we eat, right? We figure, okay, we go grocery shopping on the weekend, then we do this, and we have these certain recipes, and maybe my wife cooks some meals and I cook some meals, right? We have a rhythm. It's a sustainable rhythm about how we're eating, right? That allows us to put less and less energy into it. It becomes easier and easier over time. Most of us have also figured out things at work that are sustainable, right? Like if I'm working with a client, I also have to write notes. I figured out ways to do it a sustainable way so that it doesn't take up a lot of time in my life, right? So the more dialed in we can get these principles, the easier flow is going to be in our life. The main problem most of us are facing is we're going over here and trying to do this and going over here and trying to do this, going over here and trying to do this, going over here. And we're not actually creating the sustainable processes necessary to meet these needs. So what I am going to get into, because like I said, gets a little too nitty gritty there. And if you have a company that wants a workshop, I'd be happy to go into all of those principles in depth. But today I want to make it easy for you guys and talk about what we need to focus on if we're really trying to build a life in flow. And one of the keys are making sure we fill our needs. Okay, what do I mean by needs? There's this guy, anybody in here familiar with Maslow's hierarchy before? Yeah, about a quarter of the room maybe. Cool, a little more, right? So Maslow is a guy who, long time ago, I think like 70 years ago, 80 years ago, set up this system of needs, okay? It's not perfect, but it is really, really good. It's the best I know. And basically what it says is we have a series of needs, and there are needs on the bottom that form the foundation of our ability to get to the higher levels. And if we can dial in the stuff on the lower levels, then it can get easier and easier and easier to figure out how to stretch to those higher levels. And if I have somebody who wants to build the higher levels, what I teach them to do is how to extend the pyramid outwards, even from the bottom. So let me go through these really quick, or quick enough. So the first is our physiological needs, which is just a fancy way of saying the stuff our body needs. So what is that? We need to eat, we need to sleep, we need to breathe, we need to move. Those are the core keys, right? You've heard this before, you've read the books, but it's extremely important. McDonald's in, garbage out, right? The food you eat matters. The nutrients you put into your body matters. The input is going to create the output, right? So it's not just how much am I eating, that's part of it, it's the quality of what I'm eating that matters a lot, okay? Second is sleep. You've heard it before, 6 to 8 hours, blah, 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 blah. It's not just the time you're sleeping, it's also the quality of that sleep, right? Most of us are on our phones until bed, and it's wrecking our sleep. There's all of these really cool studies that have shown that if you can get off your phone for about an hour before you sleep, you can bank up to twice the amount of rest as somebody who's on their phone before you go to bed. Why? Because the first 2 hours spent sleeping are spent processing everything you just took in the last couple of hours. So if you don't leave yourself time to process before sleep, you may not be getting the most out of your sleep. If you're finding it hard to fall asleep, finding it hard to stay asleep, waking up groggy, those are problems that we want to address, because it means okay, I'm sleeping for 8 hours, but you're not actually getting the most out of that time, and then that issue stacks up. So sleep, diet, movement, right, is really important. We should all be moving at least 10 to 15 minutes a day, even if it's just going for a walk, okay? It doesn't need to be high intensity exercise. If you are interested, check out Alloy, check out RJ's gym, it's super awesome. But ideally at least 10 to 15 minutes of movement a day, right? Now that can be things like mix it up, right? Go for a walk, do some yoga, do different things, but you want to get yourself moving. And then finally, breathing, okay? We don't think about breathing because it happens automatically. But the reality is most of us, when we're doing automatic breathing, are not taking in the full amount of oxygen that we really need. So it can be really helpful to just take small breaks during the day, even if it's just 30 seconds a couple times a day. Stop and take some full, big, deep breaths in the same way that RJ might stop you and have you reposition your back, right? I want to reposition your breathing. What I really recommend is people adopting some sort of stillness practice during their day, right? Get all the TV off and the computer away and the phone away and sit still for maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, right? These are things like meditation, but even just sitting still and breathing will do the job. So those are some of the physiological needs. Next is
8 minutes in the morning and 8 minutes at night.
there you go. Very good, Patty. Since we took a break anyway, how am I doing on time?
You're, like 3 minutes.
3 minutes, perfect. Okay, so I'll go through this quickly. So safety is about both physical safety and psychological safety. Most of us in the room, we've got physical safety taken care of. You know you have a house, you know nobody's gonna punch you, right? Those things are important. It's also about psychological safety, which is the prediction of future safety. What does that mean? We know we have a reliable income coming in. We know we're going to be able to afford the things we need to afford. You know that the people around you are going to help you or take care of you, right? Safety is also about our internal stress, right? Most of the time people come in, they think they want to work on connection or identity or actualization with me, but the reality is we have to work through safety because there's all of these fear and anxiety triggers stored in their body that are interrupting their daily life so frequently. Most of the time we don't even realize it. When people come into me and they say, I'm depressed, what I always know to be true is the depression is there masking a bunch of anxiety and pain that's stacked up over the years. We have to, peel the depression away and get in there and work on the safety triggers that are embedded in our nervous system. I use a technology called bilateral stimulation to help with that in conjunction with talk therapy. So safety is really important. Next is connection. Okay? Connection, we know this, all of our businesses, what is the number one thing that creates a business is connections, right? It's people that are buying the things we have to sell, right? In life, it's all about connection, whether it's our family or relationships, but it is about creating interconnection, right? It's about creating healthy connections where we're able to give naturally and easily of the things that we have and receive naturally and easily of the things other people have. That's what creates sustainable families, sustainable businesses, sustainable lives. Now, next is identity, right? What is special and unique about me? What do I have to give, right? So this is the things we do during our day that feel purposeful, right? Whether I'm helping my kids or helping a friend or doing, working on IT, working on marketing, working on inspection, whatever I do that makes me feel uniquely skilled and I'm sort of giving back to the world, that's what identity is all about. And then finally, the top, actualization. This is like, how can I be the best version of myself, right? This ongoing growth process. But also for some people, it's a very spiritual thing. It's how can I add the most value to the world, right? How can I make the most difference? How can I make the world the best place I can? And a big part of that is by being our best authentic self. So again, the more we want to get to the top, the more we got to make sure these things on the bottom are dialed in. And so if you think about anything you've learned to do really well, we all need help. We all need a coach. We all need a system, right? And so it's about having a really good system, and I use Maslow's hierarchy or other frameworks to help people, but also having a coach, also having somebody there to guide you along that process. So again, if you guys know a friend or a business or somebody looking for a speaker, I'm here to help them figure out a very simple system like this to begin guiding their life in a sustainable way to create less pain and more joy. I've used it in my life. I've benefited greatly. I've used it at this point. I mean, I think I'm close to 1,000 different lives that I've touched just with counseling alone. And I think probably closer to 10,000 in terms of the people I've spoken with and trained and made an impact. And so I'm very passionate about this stuff. You know this. If you know anybody that can benefit, let me know. Happy to talk to them. Thank you guys so much for listening. And I hope this was valuable for you. Again, if you want, I'll leave this up here in a second. If you want the slides, we'll have them available for you if the computer works. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Matt Swartz of All the Lives.